Well, folks, the points are finally in for week 1 of Skirmish Season 9, at least most of them, and all of our heroes are going to be on the board headed into week 2. That said, we have a pretty good idea of who is very, very likely to leave us next week, as well as how the meta is shaping up through the rest of the season. Let's go through the points and talk projections today. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando, and go again, a fabulous cast. And thank you so much for tuning in today. I freaking love Skirmish season, and I love talking about it and looking at the projections. And that's what we are doing today. We just got the week 1 data maybe a couple hours ago before this. I don't know why I questioned that. It was a couple hours ago. So I plugged it into the spreadsheet and made all the numbers nice. And I want to go through that today. We can talk about how things are shaping up for week 2, what will likely happen next week, and then what you can expect going into the end of the season, as well as we'll do some projections. Now, to kick this off, I made a statement in the intro that we had seen most of the points. So what I have right now is just a little snippet. I remember I had projected I had counted 905 available points during week 1. Now, there were a small number of those that were actually midweek events, which would have happened before the Friday ban, but after the Living Legend announcement, right, that came a couple hours ago. So we expected there to be some delta. What you see there, though, is we only have 745 points of the 905 available, which is like in the 15 to 20% range. That's a pretty significant gap of missing events. So did some stores flip from Blitz to LL? Potentially. Did some stores fail to fire? Potentially. I highly suspect there's a large number of, well, maybe not large, but I suspect there's a number of events out there that haven't been closed. All right, somebody didn't click the submit button or something wonky is going on. So I don't know. Either way, there is potentially another roughly 150, little over 100, like 160 points that are potentially on the table through the end of this week that could go to one of these. That said, we've already missed the checkpoint, which means that we're dealing with what we're dealing with, right? Sans some emergency ban, which I would not expect to happen at all, right? So what we have is what we have. Now, what I'm showing up right now is the LSS-driven image, and it's a pretty cool image. It gives a pretty good breakdown of where things fell. Zen is number 1 at 33, Victor at 21. We did expect him to do quite well. Blaze at 14, which is not as high as I personally thought it was going to be. But we've seen Aracne popping up doing some things, and yeah, it's pretty cool to watch things out. So, but anyway, you see Zen is 33%, or not 33%, sorry, 33 wins. Okay, a good chunk of that pie, and actually it's just shy of 25%. Okay, we also see that Briar and Dash both pulled 10, which I think is so awesomely appropriate because they were the two that were in the lead that needed basically the same number of points. They remain neck and neck. So I think it's really cool, and thank you, LSS, for getting us this graphic. And I do hope that if more points come in, we get it updated. But I suppose it's neither here nor there because we'll be talking week 2 data before we know it. All right, so what I have up now is, that's right, the infamous Andrew spreadsheet, and it goes all the way across the bottom because it's a wide one, right? With I wanted to have the original projection stuff in there as well as the current point tracking. So it's a bit of an eye chart, but don't worry, we'll talk through it to some points. You can also see that the blue lines are all off. I actually added a blue line for ASC, Arachne ASC, because I think they're doing really well. Doing very well, actually, and in a really good spot. So Briar and Dash, let's just start with that. They need 5 wins left. For each of them has 5 wins to go. And that's why that 160 points-ish that's on the table, still, if it comes in this week, is actually very relevant because, so let's skip ahead a little bit. You can see on the very far right column, currently they're matched, which is awesome, but currently they're both just shy of 7% of the wins. So if you took 7% of those wins of the 160 points, they're still going to fall just shy, right, of their LL. So even if that happens, I mean, you never know, they could do some cleanup and stuff, but regardless, you have them week 2. So if they keep that 7% though, right, because keep in mind the entire field's moving together. So if we assume that the field's going to roughly stay the same going into next weekend, they should get enough to LL, right? No question about it. And that has some interesting implications for what I saw this weekend as well. Now, keep going down the line. We saw that Rhinar pulled down 80 points, still has 24 points to go, which is quite a bit. Now, remember, Rhinar needed 22% week 1 to go, but only needed 11.2% by week 2, which is very interesting because Rhinar currently is just shy of 11%. So he's not technically, mathematically on track to LL until week 3, but I think it's confirmed, at least if he holds this win rate, I think Rhinar can certainly LL this season, right? He could potentially go week 3. It is going to be very, very, very close for Rhinar, and that is very interesting. Now, Victor pulled down 105 points last weekend, which is 15%. He will almost certainly be fine because, well, let's go ahead and just jump to the big boy in the room. Zen got 23%. So it actually wasn't quite 25%, but he pulled down 23% of the points of the wins. Okay. So he needed over 50% to go week 1. Obviously he didn't do that. But by week 2, Zen needs 26%. So again, with everyone moving together, next week, if he actually just increases just a little on his win rates, he could potentially go week 2, right? So Zen is currently sitting at 205 points, needs 300 points. That's a lot. But then if we go back to the projections, there are 875 points available. So it's doable. It is still on the table. However, that's going to be based on what we're seeing at the rough, let's just call it 25%. I think it's going to be tough for Zen to go week 2. So I think our original, my original projections when we talked last Friday were definitely too aggressive. I was giving Zen clearly too much credit. That said, some of the Briar points, 5 of those Briar points are for me, right? Which was pretty awesome. But with Briar and Dash gone, that definitely, but I guess that's not relevant because if they're on week 2. I was going to say with them gone, he could do better, but that wouldn't be until week 3. So there you go. Now, Blaze is very interesting to me. I am very surprised Blaze is not doing better. I hosted a skirmish and then I went to a skirmish this weekend. I saw 2 blazes across the field, and we know of 1 other blaze in our city. So to our knowledge, there are 3 blazes, not counting the cold foils that were given out this weekend. Okay, so people who were playing it before. So maybe that is just maybe I severely underestimated globally the presence of Blaze. I kind of figured the folks would be on her. We're going to be very good with her. And I think that's the case, but I do think that she might, let's just say it this way. I underestimated her representation. And I think that's driving that. Say she's still performing very well. She is the 3rd place hero, right? Which, if you consider the supply shortage in 3rd place hero, I think that's relevant. Now let's pop down to ASC, pulling in 40 points. So ASC had 9 points coming into this season. You see 9 points there. That's pretty good. I wasn't sure whether they were going to go to ASC or New. New, I believe, pulled down 10, but she's not on this chart, but I believe New pulled down 10 points. So it's very clear that ASC being able to dual threat, because they don't know what you have in your hand, is clearly the better disruptive threat in this case. So I do expect them to do better, especially as the dashes and Briars of the world LL. I think ASC's in a great spot headed into week 3. So with them leaving week 2, we will have to see what the net impact into week 3 is in terms of the distributions. But again, I really think it's very interesting to just, because the whole field's moving together. If we just assume that the vast majority of the percentages carry within some percentage point, you're very tight on Zen. Briar and Dash are gone. We're very tight on Zen. So it could very potentially happen. Also want to point out Emperor only got 1 win week 1, which is sad, but I think expected. It's, Briar's, he's tough into Briar. Zen just chews through him because that's a lot to go through, and he doesn't do very well against Blaze. So I think Emperor's in a rough spot, but if certain things change, I think Emperor could pop back up, right? Especially if you're in an area where we don't see a lot of Blazes and Briar goes. Emperor could become more relevant. And he, he's got some room to go. So he'll almost certainly be around for the rest of the season, but that's pretty cool. Now, what very thing is interesting, I think last comments on our projections on Friday, I talked a bit about Prism and how Prism and Advent of Thrones, I was suspecting we're splitting the field. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not in terms of who's playing them. We had one Prism at my event, and it was Advent. It was not OG Prism. But what's interesting about the points is Advent's not on here because Advent is goose egg so far this season, whereas Prism's actually pulled down 15 points, so 3 wins. And I'm actually a little surprised Prism's not doing a little better. I think Prism's pretty strong into this, but maybe she needs some things to happen first. So that'll be interesting to see probably week 3, because everything will be the same week 2. It'll be interesting to see week 3 how she emerges, or if maybe this was just a fluke and she pops up week 2. So that's what we're going to be watching. Week 2 is not just those eke out points. Can Zen get an extra couple percentage points? Maybe not. But I think he definitely can. But I wouldn't hold your breath on not having to. And hey, if you're a Zen player, then you're probably really happy you're going to get to run him all 3 weeks. More than likely, I would say. But if you're a Briar or Dash player, next weekend is your weekend. Take him out for one last spin, amigo. Because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So anyway, let me know what you all are thinking. And also if you watched the projection video last Friday and you made some calls, are you right? Are you wrong? Let me know below. What do you think is going to happen week 2? Do you think my estimate on lose Dash Briar, Zenza maybe, nobody else? Do you think that's solid? Do you think the percentages will be mostly the same next weekend? Or do you think they're going to adjust a little bit as people try to out-meta it? I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'd love to see your comment. See your comments. I'd love to see your comments and read them. Thanks, my friends, and go Commando.